I painted a rock one time and I called it the razor's edge, you know, like you can fall off. You know, it's such a razor sharp, thin edge from death to life, you know. It can happen so just in a split second. At some points I've come within seconds of dying. Started looking at these things like they're God winks. Within 30 minutes I was in a coma for 10 days. And I heard a voice that said, "John, you don't have to drink anymore." You know, I'd been an alcoholic all my life. Got a liver in, do you want it? They've got to ask you. I said, hell yeah, let's go, let's rock. So we're flying down the hall, go through these double doors, 40 people jump into action, you know, and I mean, it's game on. I was gonna get a liver. Here I was, #1 in Texas, been waiting 3 months, had hours to live, you know, or I was gonna be just, all of a sudden they stopped. And I'm going, oh shit. I didn't know what happened, you know, about the insurance, but I knew something bad happened, you know, and I was going, well, this is it. So I saw one video of Richard Hart and I went, that dude is my new guru, man. At least some honesty, I could see the honesty and integrity, you know. I was so far down, you know, that spiritually it started to make sense to me, you know. Looking at HEX in a kind of a new way of life. I mean, you know, you got, here he is with Richard with a sci-fi book that says, get rich, be loved, live forever, you know, and I took that to heart, man. I was going, yeah, all right. Hi, my name's The Only Juan. I'm from Texas. I'd like to tell my story about some of the obstacles the health obstacles that I went through getting into HEX, and at some points I've come within seconds of dying. Well, there are several events. Like one time I was appraising a piece of property out in the country, and you know, it was an old abandoned mansion out in the hill country of Texas. Nobody had been there in like 40 years. I happened to have Sandy with me, and so I went out to do the inspection, and I was walking through the middle of the mansion, 30-foot high ceiling, and all of a sudden something hit me in the back of the head and just knocked me on all fours. And there were a bunch of hornets up there, and one of them just came down and dive bombed me and hit me in the back of on the crown of the head and knocked me out. If she wouldn't have been there, it was way out in the country. They never would have found me, you know. The next time something happened, I was sitting in a restaurant and I couldn't breathe. I was turning blue, literally. My oxygen saturation was like 72, you know, and it should be 98 or 100. You know, within 30 minutes, I was in a coma for 10 days. Somewhere inside that coma, I had this vision, and it was just like a technicolor dream. And I was floating on a piece of corrugated metal, and I was being held down by these fishing line, and I was underwater and I was breathing. And I looked up, and there was a wooden porch of a shack, and the shack was in the mountains, you know. And so I was breathing, and I reached in my pocket and I got my Swiss Army knife, and I got the scissors out and I cut those strands of fishing line, and then I was breathing, and I just floated to the top where the porch was, and I got out and I went through a door, and I had the most magnificent feeling I've ever had. It was just like a warm, I can only describe it as a golden, hazy, yellowish color, you know. That's what the sensation was like. It was just wonderful. And I heard a voice that said, John, you don't have to drink anymore. Now, I'd been an alcoholic all my life. So 4 months later, my sister comes running over to the house and throws this book on the table. And the picture, the cover of it was identical to the one that was in my vision, you know, that I had. and up in the upper right-hand corner, it had the hazy yellow sun, and it was called The Shack, and it was a #1 bestseller about an after-death experience. I don't know what that means, but I think it means that, I was almost to the other side. I think it was a vision, meaning, in the spiritual world. So I started looking at these things like they're God winks, I painted a rock one time. So I painted one side of it black, and, it had death and addiction and all this. And then on the other side, I painted, it was yellow. I painted it yellow with red letters, and sobriety and peace. And then on the top ridge, I painted that red and got a little soldier and glued it on top of that ridge, so it looked like he was walking up and down this ridge, but his feet were bleeding, and I called it the razor's edge, like you can fall off. It's such a razor sharp, thin edge from death to life, it can happen so just in a split second. That seems like my life kind of follows that thing that I made, called the razor's edge, with the guy glued onto it, just could fall off either side, I was diagnosed with cirrhosis, and my life just physically, just for that next year, this was 5 years ago, for that whole year I kept getting, I was just sick as I could be. I mean, the water, the fluids would come in and just bounce off my liver. Here's what happened. I went to the hospital, and the doctor came out, and he goes, "John, you've got 0 liver function, and you're operating on 13% of a kidney. Because you could fall over and die right now, and there wouldn't be a damn thing I could do for you, nothing." I was nearing my time. I was #1 in Texas to get a liver. My insurance company had canceled me for the 3 months prior for non-payment of insurance. For $1,480.93, they would reinstate me. And so I would have insurance protection. Well, at the same time, I was over in the hospital, and I get a call. Said, "John, we got a liver in, do you want it? They've got to ask you." I said, "Hell yeah, let's go. Let's rock." So we're flying down the hall, go through these double doors, 40 people jump into action, and I mean, it's game on. I was gonna get a liver. Here I was, #1 in Texas, been waiting 3 months, had hours to live, or I was gonna be just, all of a sudden they stop. I'm going, oh shit. I didn't know what happened, about the insurance, but I knew something bad happened, and I was going, well, this is it. There's no more hope. I mean, the insurance hadn't made the connection yet. I was out of luck, been headed back to the room. It took forever to get back to the room. Anyway, I was sitting back there for about 30 minutes, and all of a sudden I get a second call. "Hey, John, we got a liver. Do you want it?" And I was going, "Oh yeah, I want it. Let's go." And it turns out it was a better match, better fit all the way around. And so just a God wink. I mean, the insurance hadn't gone through for the first one, which would have been worse for me anyway, and I probably wouldn't be alive. I don't know, who knows. That was the major God wink where I went, all right, God wants me alive for some reason. I had great credit, but I didn't have any money, so I borrowed $56,000 and got into this Circle Society, which was, this guy was running a scam. He said he was doing arbitrage between exchanges, and it could, but you give him, 1 Bitcoin, you get back 3 in 3 weeks, and it's kind of shit, That went on for 1.5 years, and then the next year I was in Cardano and got my coins scammed somehow. I forgot some stupid move, but it just proved to me that the space is a cesspool of scammers and thieves, And it's just ruthless out there, you know? And then, so I saw one video of Richard Hart, and I went, that dude is my new guru, man. At least some honesty. I could see the honesty and integrity, you know? Just from what the guy was saying, just forget all that. He was fighting off all these people, and every time they'd say something, it's just like it'd bounce off Richard, and shit would just go back on these guys, but they didn't, you know, they never saw the light, you know? And so I just, for something to come along, and I was so far down, you know, that spiritually it started to make sense to me, you know, looking at Hex in a kind of a new way of life. I mean, you know, you got, here he is with Richard with a sci-fi book that says, get rich, be loved, live forever, you know, and I took that to heart, man. I was going, yeah, all right. I mean, there's the title of it, there's the blueprint of how you can live your life, you know. And live in abundance. You know, you got to do a little delayed gratification, but you know, it's going to be okay. It's going to be abundant in the future if you just live that way, you know. I staked in quarterly for 15 years. It's like my future's taken care of. Just do the delayed gratification part, and know that I'll always be living in abundance in the future, you know. And no matter what the price is, I'll have a little bit, you know, coming along where I can live on it. And it's, so I waited my 3 years, you know, from 2019, 2020, you know, to now. And I mean, it's just paying off. I've been able to help a bunch of people, you know. I retired, you know, just and every 3 months I get a chunk of money coming in, you know, and it's just do the time, do the delayed gratification, and your reward will be there. So that's what really, that gave me hope, you know. I mean, hope that things can get better, because things are pretty tumultuous.